Hi, my name's Sherry Godlewski, and I work with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and I serve as the Resiliency and Adaptation Manager. I primarily focus on climate change issues, and I help communities become more resilient to the impacts of climate change. I first got to know Green Mountain Conservation Group in 1999 when Blair contacted me and asked me to speak at the first ever Watershed Weekend. Since then, I've stayed in touch with Green Mountain Conservation Group, I've attended many events, and I've kept a lovely and long-lasting relationship with Blair. When Tara contacted me, she asked me to speak about the pandemic, air quality, and climate change, and where are we now after the stay-at-home orders. Well, reduced air pollution during the COVID-19 pandemic has made headlines all over the world. New Hampshire has also enjoyed some cleaner than normal air due to the pandemic. Most of the articles are focusing on a single air pollutant, nitrogen oxides. Nitrogen oxides, which include nitrogen dioxide, are very common and widespread air pollutants that are chemically involved in producing other air pollutants, such as ozone, small particles, and acid deposition. Burning almost any type of fuel will produce nitrogen oxides, including fuels used for our home furnaces, power plants, and of course, our cars and trucks. When the pandemic struck, economic activity was reduced, and perhaps the biggest change we could see on the highways was during rush hour, when there were far fewer of us driving our cars to and from work. New Hampshire highway traffic was reduced by just over 50% in April compared to February levels. Most of this reduction was from passenger cars, and this resulted in less nitrogen oxide emissions from gasoline combustion. Comparatively, truck traffic was only down slightly as goods still needed to be shipped and home delivery increased. Think toilet paper and online shopping. When we look at our data from around March 15th to around April 20th, during the stay-at-home period, we see about a 30% decrease in concentrations of nitrogen dioxide compared to that same period in 2019. This type of pattern was repeated for carbon monoxide, which is another pollutant commonly associated with automobile traffic. Carbon monoxide levels were down almost 40%, but are now back to 2019 levels. The end of April and May, we started to see economic activity recover and higher traffic levels. As a result, nitrogen dioxide concentrations have already rebounded and are now slightly above the 2019 levels. Other air pollutants, such as ozone and sulfur dioxide, never really dropped below 2019 concentrations and now are slightly higher than last year. New Hampshire is not alone in seeing reduced nitrogen dioxide concentrations. Many places in the country are also measuring various degrees of lower nitrogen dioxide. Cities like Washington, D.C. and New York City experienced roughly 40 to 50% lower than normal nitrogen dioxide concentrations in April during the middle of the stay-at-home orders. Rural areas like ours saw less reduction than urban areas because we have less to start with. So yes, some pollution levels did decrease for a short period of time during the stay-at-home phase of this pandemic, but as we resume our activities, we are putting more pollution into the air, and we see the levels being higher than last year's levels. And this same pattern emerged after the 2009 recession. As economic activity rebounded, so did the associated pollutants. And in terms of climate change, the pandemic economic downturn did show a sudden plunge in global greenhouse gases, but another crucial metric for determining the severity of global warming is the amount of greenhouse gases actually in our atmosphere, and that just hit a record high. According to readings from the Mauna Loa Carbon Dioxide Observatory, the amount of carbon dioxide in the air in May of 2020 went up to 417 parts per million. This is the highest monthly average ever recorded and is up from last year's reading of 414.7 parts per million. Carbon dioxide levels are the highest they've been in human history and likely the highest in the last 3 million years. The last time there was this much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, our early human ancestors lived in Africa. Global average surface temperatures were significantly warmer, and sea levels were 50 to 80 feet higher. The continuing rise in carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere may sound surprising in light of the recent findings that the pandemic and the associated lockdowns had led to a steep drop in global greenhouse gases, peaking at a 17% decline in early April. Carbon dioxide emissions reductions on the order of 20 to 30% would need to be sustained for 6 to 12 months in order for the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide to slow in a detectable way. And currently, the rate of increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is accelerating. So yes, the crisis has slowed emissions, but not enough to show up at the Mauna Loa Observatory, which is to be expected in an atmosphere that is both big and variable. But the total amount of carbon dioxide that winds up in the atmosphere is driven not only by human emission levels, but also through processes where CO2 or carbon dioxide is absorbed on the land surface, especially by forests and in the oceans, both of which fluctuate on a yearly basis. And drought and extreme heat can weaken the ability of forests and other lands to soak up carbon dioxide. Wildfires and deforestation can add to the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide as well, though their influence isn't nearly as much as the global burning of fossil fuels. Because atmospheric carbon dioxide levels are cumulative, they will continue to increase until net emissions are cut to zero. They will not decrease until human activities and natural ecosystems are removing more greenhouse gases than are going into the atmosphere. And molecules of carbon dioxide can remain in the atmosphere for up to 1,000 years. Scientists warn that we're on the course to reach 450 parts per million by mid-century, where levels would need to stop increasing to have a decent chance of meeting the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, which seeks to limit climate change to well below 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels by 2100. It would take a sustained drop in emissions rather than a sudden decline related to a pandemic to show up more clearly in measurements of atmospheric carbon dioxide. It is a reminder that climate change is not on pause in any way, shape, or form. But we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that the effect of the pandemic on emissions is trivial or that climate progress is impossible. It isn't. Short-term changes in anything are hard to detect in something as big as the atmosphere. What really matters here is setting a new trajectory in how we recover from this pandemic. For New Hampshire, we can expect to be warmer and wetter as we move forward in time. Our summers are going to be hotter and longer, while our winters will be shorter and warmer. We can expect to see increases in tick-borne illness, flooding, and periods of summertime drought, just like we're heading into now. Winter recreation will be shortened as there may be more rain instead of snow, or there may be more icing events. Paying attention to what is going on around us helps us see the connection between the changes in our day-to-day weather events and how these extreme changes are evidence of our changing climate. So we need to move forward and use this recovery from the pandemic as an opportunity. Green Mountain Conservation Group does a wonderful job of conducting and supporting scientific research. And you take that research and data and you share it with people of the watershed and the larger community. Education is so important to helping people understand what's around them, and people can care more when they understand and appreciate the fragile nature of our ecosystems. Advocating for the natural resources that we depend on for life, open space, clean air, clean water, is something all of us believe in, and we must continue to raise our voices together. Land conservation is so important to support our clean air and clean water. Forests capture carbon dioxide and help to decrease climate change. Protecting open space and keeping ecosystems intact make them more resilient to the extreme weather events we are experiencing regularly due to our changing climate. So keep doing what you're doing and stay strong. Keep reducing your fossil fuel use. Every one of us needs to reduce our fossil fuel use. Bring voice to the issues in the watershed as well as to global issues. Help people understand the signs of climate change around us each day, and yet act locally in the manner that has been established by the hard work of the excellent Green Mountain Conservation Group staff, including Blair, Tara, Moselle, Jill, Ellie, and Sarah, and now Matt. So my best to you in continuing the good work that you're doing, and please know that if anyone has questions or comments, Tara knows how to reach me, and you can be in touch. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your meeting.